Welcome to Out with Dan, the podcast that spotlights and examines the voices of LGBTQ+ authors, characters, and our allies. Together, we lift our voices and we tell our stories. I'm Dan White. Join me as I chat with this week's author. Hello and welcome back to Out with Dan. Today I'm excited to be talking to Jason Dombrow about his debut novel, Hello Heaven, Is Poppy There? Hi, Jason.
Hello, Dan.
Give us a little background on where the book came from.
Well, it's a true story about my experience as a 9-year-old child dealing with the death of my grandfather. In an attempt to share something that my family never talked about, which was death and dying. It was like kind of, my grandfather died and then he disappeared. Mm-hmm. And at that age, I didn't understand what death was. I didn't understand where he went. I didn't understand how I couldn't talk to him anymore. And the way in which I dealt with it as a 9-year-old was to use my imagination. And this book is the story of that imagination to try and help people, parents talk to their kids about death and dying and what it means and what's happening, and have it be a sort of not like a depressing conversation, but more of an uplifting one.
I agree. I don't find your book to be depressing at all. I find it to be very straightforward. And death is something that we all experience. We're going to die eventually, but as children, death hits us very differently than it does as an adult. And oftentimes it is, as you say with your experience, that we don't understand or know what's going on, because when it's someone you're close to and they're in your life, when they disappear, it's difficult for children to grasp onto, I think.
It is, but I think the more truthful we can be with our kids, because they do understand, they do comprehend. It might take them a minute, but they want to know the truth. They crave for the truth because they're trying to understand life. And if we don't talk about it, and if we don't express the truth about what's happening, in a sense, you're lying to a kid to have them feel better so they don't get hurt, but they have to learn to deal with the hurt too. And I think if we overstep that, we're really doing a disservice to the child. That's just my opinion, but that's why I wrote this book, is to help people, not have it be such a taboo.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that, children intuitively know so many more things than we give them credit for. They understand oftentimes the cycle of life a little bit better. I believe in reincarnation personally. So I believe that sometimes children are already closer to what they've experienced before. And so they're working on things. And I think that if we gloss over anything with children, they don't understand why you're glossing over it or why you're ignoring it, because children grieve just as adults grieve. So
sure.
So besides your experience, did you have other friends that had some type of similar experience when you were growing up? Do you remember?
Not that I know of, because I never talked about it. This story I've never shared in 35 years. The one person I told was my nephew, whose uncle died when he was 9. And I thought maybe if I shared the story, he would try it out, call heaven, talk to his uncle and have a conversation. But I didn't really know what to say. And because it was the first time I was sharing the story, and I didn't know what he would understand, but I just told him a little bit, as comfortable as I felt in that uncomfortability of sharing the story with my nephew. And then it wasn't till a couple of years ago that it was the first time I had a conversation with my brother about how he felt, about my grandfather's death, because we never talked about it. It was just like he disappeared when he died, and the family, we grieved and we did all the ritual stuff, and then it was like he was gone. But there was no upkeep of his memory, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense.
I think it is.
So this is kind of my tribute to keeping my grandfather's legacy alive, like who he was for me. And I think that's one, a treasure of my own that that I did, but it's really a story that I'm sharing because I think it'll make a difference. And that's really where it's coming from. So did I talk about it when I was a kid? No. Did other people have people that died? Sure, I'm sure they did, but did I know what to say, or besides the usual I'm sorry and for your loss and my thoughts are with your family and all that. But I think that what makes this book so fun for me is that I got to relive the experiences, and right before I launched the book, I went to my grandfather's house in Brooklyn and sort of reminisced about the things that we used to do there, because there was the stairs in the back that I used to run down, and you'd have to time them because they weren't the same size. Or like we used to play box ball, box ball. I forget what they call it. Box ball, I think.
Okay.
A Brooklyn game, I suppose. The boxes on the sidewalk. And like the little fence I used to run around, and it was just like, and the balcony at my grandfather's house where there used to be like some chains that we used to we just used our imagination, and that's what he encouraged us to do. And he would never, I remember one time I was playing, they had this really cool bar set that was like in this big cabinet, but it was just like the thing would come down, it would mirror and it'd light up, and the glass rack was, I didn't even know what alcohol was. I was just like pretending I was a bartender mixing things. I remember somebody, I don't remember who it was, but someone at whatever event we were doing at my grandfather's house was like, well, why are you letting him play with liquor? And he was like, what is he doing? So if he opens up a bottle, like it just was never an issue. Just let the kids play. Like it was just like, let him play, let him do what he want to do. So that was really reminiscent before I launched the book, because those are the stories that, matter to me.
Yes.
And I think when you tell a story with passion and something that matters to you, like I did in this book, those stories will remind you of the times that you spent with your grandfather or whoever that you lost. And that was the hope, to kind of stir up the memories, to have the conversation be really juicy. There was one thing I wanted to say to a point you said earlier about kids understanding, because I launched this book in New York at the elementary school that I graduated from in 1988. And I was a little nervous, but it just seemed to be make the most sense. And it started with the fourth graders and the fifth graders and then the third graders. So it was between those grades. And the words that the kids would say about how they felt or what they got from the story, I mean, they used words like depressed and disappointed. And I'm like, you're 10 years old. How do you even know these words, But they got the gist of the book, oh yeah, use your imagination. Oh yeah, talk to whoever, like they know, they get it. And I think that was a really powerful thing for me to see, because, I know how they react. I know how it impacted them. I know that they like it. It's funny to hear when they laugh and what jokes they find funny. Sometimes you're like, you thought that was funny, but I'm not them. I'm glad you're laughing. That's all.
Well, and I do think that that's a big thing. Something you said, when someone would pass away, you would say the things that were nice to say. When you teach a child only to say the nice things, my thoughts and prayers are with you, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But if the child doesn't understand the emotion behind it for themselves, they can only say nice things that they're taught, because they can't really help someone grieve or be there for someone, because they don't have the tools for that. I'm hoping that today's parents are being more straightforward with children. And it's not to say that your parents or my parents or someone who's, more than 30 years old, it's not that our parents necessarily got it wrong. Maybe they only had so many tools in their tool bag. But this book gives us a tool to be able to say, here is something as a tool to both parents and children.
For sure. Good, I'm sorry.
Were there many parents there at your book launch, or was it mostly kids in school?
It was the kids, but there were some teachers for sure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I remember there was one teacher that caught my eye because I started playing the song that's associated with this book, and she started crying, and I just remember playing this. I was playing the song, and I'm like, oh my God, she's crying, and I wanted to stop to ask her if she was okay, but I'm like, keep going, play the song. She's just getting moved. Just okay. And it was like,
well, so you've accomplished one thing you set out to do.
How do I care about this person and just let them have their experience? Like it's a good sign. It's a good sign. But yeah, there were parents, and it was nice to see some. There was one teacher that happened to be the parent of someone I went to high school with in an elementary school. So it was fun to see that, and somebody knew my brother. So, it was just fun, but to go back to that environment and, that literally where my dream of writing and being a singer all came from, these kids are at such a tender age where their imagination is so wild that that's where they're creating those little dreams that they hold inside and never share or do or whatever. And it's no, we got to open up and listen to the kids and nurture those ideas and nurture those dreams, because that's the gold. That's what they're craving. They're craving that nurturing so that they can be who they think they should be.
Absolutely. And if we're stuck in a position where we don't learn to grieve at an early age, then that sort of stifles our creativity going forward, because, while no one lives for grief, grief is a natural part of life, and you have to learn to navigate it. So I never know where the camera is. So I love the fact that you use Dobermans. They're so beautiful. So,
well, thank you. Well, it's because my dog is a Doberman, and he plays me in the story.
Perfect. And is there a reason for using an animal rather than a human in your experience?
Well, with the company that I hired, Dinosaur House, we kind of thought that to make the dogs, I don't know the word. He used a word that I'll never be able to pronounce because I don't know it. It's like one of those SAT words. You're like, what was it? It was to humanize the dogs, to make them, I don't remember. It starts with an A, but I don't remember. It was their suggestion, and I think it was his suggestion. I think it was my suggestion to use the dogs because I wanted to use Disco, my dog, as the main character. But I think he was the one who said, well, we can call them the Dobermans or something. He was joking, but I was like, that's exactly perfect, because my last name is Dombrow and Doberman's pretty close, and my dogs have Doberman, so why not?
And I also think that when
sorry, just to answer your question, it was mainly done so that the kids could have something to gravitate towards, and really it's a dog. Everybody loves dogs, so why not? I mean,
they should.
Are against cats, but we're not getting.
I have friends that have both, so it's all right. So, but I do think that using dogs to share this story is a really great tool, because it takes away a prejudice maybe against one skin tone or what have you. So what you get is something that is very neutral by using an animal, and I really applaud that greatly. So you created a song to go along with this book, is that right?
Yes, I did. Yes, it's called Hey Poppy, and it's available on all the streaming things or whatever the kids use these days. They don't have a cassette or a CD to buy.
or an 8-track. Right, I'll age myself. I'll go ahead and do that. So For the camera, will you hold up the QR code for that track
sure, yeah.
in case anybody wants to scan it with their phone?
That's what it looks like. This is the artwork for the album cover.
I love
And
it.
then the book there, I'll just hold it up for the sake of it, is
Perfect.
available on Amazon. And if you want to follow Disco on Instagram, you can go here. And if you need to contact me, you can contact me there.
That's perfect. So you've shared your Instagram. Do you have a website or Facebook or Twitter or?
I have a personal one, but I don't have anything really set up. We just launched on Thanksgiving, so everything's being created.
Perfect. Well, once again, the book is Hello Heaven, Is Poppy There? I so enjoyed this, Jason. I think it's such a wonderful tool. I hope you the very, very best of success.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me on the show.
Perfect. Hang on for me just a second.
Sure.
Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Out with Dan. You can find more information about this podcast and its host at OutWithDan.com, on Twitter at OutWithDan, and on Instagram and Facebook at GoOutWithDan. This podcast is hosted by Authors on the Air Global Radio Network, and the theme music is provided by bensound.com. Join us again soon for the next episode of Out with Dan.